Welcome to the channel. I'm Tony the Technician. Today we're going to be going into part 2 of 5 tools I wish I would have bought sooner, or it's either going to be tools that I wish I bought sooner or tools that I'm really happy that I did buy, even if I did buy them as soon as I saw them. So I did a part 1 to this and you guys really seem to enjoy that. So this is part 2, and if you guys would like to see another one, I'm sure I can dig up 5 more. So let me know your guys' thoughts on these 5 items, if you guys own any of them or if you have something similar, or drop down below some items that you're extremely happy you decided to pick up, or maybe items that you took a while to purchase because you weren't sure if you'd get some use out of them and they turned out to be a fantastic buy. Please feel free to drop a comment down below. But if you guys are interested, I will try to have all of these items linked down in the description for you guys if you guys are interested. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please make sure to smash that thumbs up. And if you guys haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe. Let's go ahead and get into this. So first up on today's list is going to be the Temco hammer crimper. And I've had this probably since around 2017, I want to say. I do a decent amount of wiring, whether that be off-road lighting, installing the inverter in the bed of my truck, rewiring the 3rd gen Camaro. I mean, I do a decent amount of wiring, and in the past I've used, all sorts of methods to try and crimp, and not just your standard, 20 gauge, 12 gauge, 10 gauge wire, 4 gauge and larger 1/0. And when it gets to that size, using a standard crimper just isn't gonna cut it, and there are kind of cheats to get around it. But when you do it pretty often, those kind of hacks are kind of irritating. So this is one of my favorite purchases. So they do have, instead of just using a normal size crimper, they do have larger pairs, which I've done videos on in the past for those larger lugs. But those are really good for inside the vehicle in case you've already ran your cables and stuff. But if you're working outside the vehicle, I like to build a lot of my wiring harnesses and stuff outside the vehicle and then install them. And that's where this really shines. This isn't good for using in a car because you have to have a solid surface and be able to hit it with a hammer. So this one's really good for working outside of the vehicle. But when you're working with those larger lugs, this just makes it so much easier than trying to stick it in a vise or use a large pair of pliers or something like that. So this is the Temco TH0007. There you can see temcoindustrial.com, and it does have engravings for the size lugs that you're working with, and it varies on each side. I don't really use those or look at them. I believe it's for when you put your lug in and then you go to crimp it. When you hit the number at which matches your lug, then it should be crimped fully. I just kind of crimp it until it feels or looks to be sufficient. It is just stacked steel plates here on the base. You can run a screw through here if you want to, attach this to your workbench or whatnot, and then you basically have this solid steel pin or punch. There you can see kind of the plus there on the bottom. I'm just using this non-insulated butt connector as an example. You would place it in here, put your cable through. Sometimes you have to hold the lug in place, sometimes it'll hold, and then you just kind of hold your cable. Depends on if you have this mounted or not. And you just hold your cable in place, and then you're basically just smacking this top part with a hammer until you get a sufficient crimp, and you'll see the little plus sign that's here engraved into the lug. It works really, really well. This has saved me a lot of time over trying to come up with other ideas on how to crimp those larger lugs. So that is number 1 on today's list. Number 2, sticking with wiring, is this. So I've had probably 4 or 5 different brands of these, and I haven't had an issue with any of them. I know a couple people have had issues with certain brands out there, but the only time I ever had an issue with these, it was the first time I ever used them, and I was trying to use a lighter to heat them up, and it was just melting the insulation before the solder was melting. And these are solder butt connectors, so instead of having to crimp your wires, but maybe you're just doing a couple wires and you don't want to dig out your soldering iron and everything and set all that up, these are amazing. They're fast, easy, and work extremely well. Like I said, I haven't had an issue with any of the 4 or 5 brands that I've used, except for the issue of using a lighter and melting this plastic sleeving before the solder. Then I switched to a heat gun and haven't had an issue with any of the brands so far. They do have this little seal here, so they're double sealed. You kind of, this is heat shrink, so it seals down around it, and then this is kind of a watertight seal as well. And then the solder melts and it seals it and connects your wire really well. Much nicer than using your standard butt connector, and they're extremely easy to use. They're very affordable as well. I'll try and have a couple different brands linked down below. You can get smaller sets if you just want to try them out, but honestly they're very affordable, anywhere from like $6 to, you know, if you get a huge set, you know, $60 or so. But this is a 200 piece set. I want to say it was around $20. I run through them quite a bit just because I enjoy using them. So there you can see what gauge wire each one is good for and how many are included in the set, then how to use them. But if you haven't tried these out, definitely give them a try. They are really nice. The only thing that these aren't great for is if you're working in a tight area inside of like a dash or doing a stereo install, getting a heat gun in there, trying not to hit other wires with your heat gun, and you know, tight spaces, these aren't the best just because it's hard to get that solder melted. But anything other than that, these things have been absolutely fantastic. Next up is my Lang brake piston compressor. So I bought this back when there were probably only a couple of them available, and I went with this one because I knew a lot of the guys in the shop that I was working in that used it, and it was just much nicer than the cheaper alternative that I saw at the time. And then they had, you know, more generic style with the basically a T-handle version of it, and for the longest time I was just using a C-clamp, honestly. And it worked just fine, but when you do it pretty often, this can really come in handy. Now, if you work in a shop or on a specific type of vehicle and that vehicle alone, and it requires the specific keyways to rotate that piston inwards, that's different. But for a majority of them that don't require that keyway, these are fantastic, whether you have a single piston, dual piston, quad piston, you know. As long as this fits in the caliper, it works extremely well, and you literally just ratchet it. And it expands, pushes evenly on the caliper, and sends the pistons back inside. Now, keep in mind, like I said, I got this back when there weren't really many other options. So it was a little bit more expensive, but there are tons of, you know, knockoffs that are very similar to it. I can't attest to those as far as their quality, but this Lang one is made in the USA. There you can see the part number. I'll try and have this one linked down below, as well as maybe a cheaper alternative if you guys are interested in something like this. But once again, I can't attest to the longevity or quality of that other one. So next up is going to be my Fujiya Allen keys. So I have tons of Allen key sets, but as far as full sets, I primarily use the DeWalt one, this Matco set. I also have the SAE version. And while there's been no issues with them, Allen keys are kind of like my last resort. I try to use bits or bit sockets, something along those lines, and then Allen keys are kind of my last resort. But these are nice if you're like going somewhere or you want to put together a roadside bag and you don't have room to carry, you know, a full set of bit sockets or anything like that. Just having a simple set of Allen keys is always handy. I come across many situations where, you know, like a bit socket and a ratchet won't necessarily work because the space is really limited. And then you get your Allen key, and then like these, the short bend is sometimes still too long. And I picked these up a few years ago, and these have been absolutely amazing. Now you can get other brands very similar to it. Once again, just like the Lang, I can't attest to the quality or anything like that, but these are from Fujiya, their Weiss lineup, and this is their super ball wrench set made in Japan. Now, when I first created a video on these, shortly after that, I could not find this set anymore. They have a lot of different sets and very, very similar sets, but I can't find this specific set. The one time I did find it, it was by a secondary seller, and it was extremely overpriced. But I'll try and find another set from them that is similar. I like these because it has the very short bend and a ball Allen. There you can see the ball end on this side is a little bit different shape than the ball end on that side. So they work at different angles. And then when you get down to the smaller two sizes here, 1.5 and 2, they do have a ball end on here, which is extremely small. Focus on that. but on the short end it doesn't. I think if they did it on that end and you applied that much torque to it from the long end, you would probably just twist that ball right off. These have held up extremely well, and I just love the length of them, so you can get tons of torque on these, but you also have a ball end and they're short, so you can get in those tighter areas. So these have been my go-to Allen set for the last few years, and I absolutely love this set. And the coating has actually held up really well because I use these pretty often. Now, keep in mind, I try to use bits and bit sockets more often, but if I have to resort to Allen keys, this is the set that I go for, and obviously only if the fastener's metric, because I don't have an SAE set, and I don't even know if they make an SAE set. So that is 4 items. Let's go ahead and quickly get into the last one, which I can't move up here because it's attached to the wall. So let's go ahead and take a look. So the last one up is the grease gun mount. So it's kind of hard to show you guys, but these things are fantastic. I used to just set these, I didn't even put them in my toolbox because I knew they were going to leak. And so I always kept them underneath my toolbox, and I just set a rag underneath of them or something like that. They just tend to make a mess. So I went searching and I found a couple different ways to mount grease guns, but I found these, I believe, on Summit, and I've done a video on them as well. You can even see just the grease. I have a mini one up here with, I think that's red and tacky or the green. Can't remember. I have the red and tacky and another one for the miniature, and then I have synthetic here for my poly bushings, and then just my multi-purpose grease here. But as you can see, they do solidify or, you know, separate, so you tend to get the more liquidy portion of the grease leaking out. And granted, if they're laying down, they probably won't leak as much, but I just like the fact that this got my grease guns in a location to where I could easily use them, because I use them a few times a year just to go through all of my vehicles, and any grease fittings that I need to grease, I will. The Camaro gets it more often, even though I don't drive it as much, just because poly bushings can be squeaky. But I just like how easily they clamp on. You mount it, and then it has the built-in tray. It's just called the Grease Gun Caddy. I believe they're made in the USA, not a big deal. It is just a plastic mount, but it does have a little spot to hold the flexible hose and everything. It's just a nice, simple little setup, and I've really enjoyed it. So I wanted to share that with you guys if you guys have some grease guns laying around. So that's it as far as the 5 items that I'm extremely happy I picked up or should have picked up sooner. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please make sure to smash that thumbs up. If you guys have any experience with any of these items, please feel free to drop a comment down below. I'll try and have all of these items and some alternatives linked down in the description for you guys. And if you guys would like to see a part 3, just let me know down in the comments. And if you guys haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.